Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Engineers podcast. Today I'm joined by Miguel de Vega, who is Chief Scientific Officer at Nillion. Congrats on the funding yesterday evening, as we're obviously podcasting in late October. So, really well done. Nillion, in essence, is building its service around the concept of blind computing, which we're going to talk about today. And blind computing, quite simply, is the processing of data without having to reveal its contents. So I'm not going to do the going into details. Miguel's going to do that. And Miguel, perfect opportunity for you to take the mic and tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Thank you, Elliot, for having me here. Yeah, so I guess I'm at the intersection between engineering and maths. In my background, professionally speaking, is on engineering, so telecom engineering, but also I have a PhD in maths. So I've always been interested in the intersection between those two things, which means essentially cryptography, but also AI intensive computations and big data and things like that. I've worked for large companies like Siemens and Nokia, but also for small startups and for banking sector and Web2, but also recently for Web3.
Love it. We've spoken to so many people about that transition from Web 2 to Web 3. I'm interested in like exploring your mindset. What's been your biggest learning?
So for me, it's been refreshing to get in contact with Web3. It happened back in 2013, and it was through maths. So I was very interested in zero knowledge proof technology, and that led me to blockchain and decentralized applications and all of that because they're heavily used in that domain. And for me, it's refreshing to learn about the ethos behind decentralization and the idea of giving power back to people, removing it from centralized authorities. This is when maths become something more than just ideas and beautiful patterns, and they become actually something actionable and useful for people and for society. And so it's been transformational for me actually.
Amazing. I can't wait to explore that today. I'm really interested in the concept. Offline just now we were talking about high level what that concept actually means, but an expert in you to actually tell us how Nillion are actually doing it is a perfect opportunity for us at Engineers as a little community. And give us the elevator pitch on Nillion. I've given my intro, but really from you, help us understand who Nillion are and what problems you're trying to solve.
Okay. I'm going to give you an elevator pitch for kind of engineers because I know that there are many amongst your audience. So essentially, when you develop applications, you can encrypt data at rest and in transfer. So you can use HTTPS, for example, or encrypted databases. But as soon as you have to process that information, you have to decrypt it. And now, if you switch roles and put yourself in the user's position, that is transformational and it's really, it has a lot of consequences because it means that you have to trust the companies with your data. Essentially, they know how to decrypt it. They have to because they have to process your data. So this is a leap of faith that is actually unnecessary. So what we're building at Nillion is a decentralized network, meaning it's a network of many different nodes that they're all collaborating, and that's what we call the Nillion blind computer. And essentially, the main task of this computer is to do all three options or three actions: storing, transferring, but also computing, all of them in encrypted form, so that at no point does any of these nodes actually see your data or have access to your personal information. All of that remains under your control. That's kind of the headline, the main idea for Nillion.
It's a pretty nuts concept. I can imagine the maths challenges, the engineering challenges that sit underneath those three pillars is pretty complex. Walk us through some of the day-to-day challenges that you're likely to see under the hood of Nillion.
Yeah, so essentially, as you say, it sounds simple, but it's really not simple. So under Nillion, there is a new generation of cryptographic protocols or primitives that has been in the baking for the last 4 decades. And it's only been recently, I would say like 3 or 4 years from now, that they become production ready. And there's more than one. So you have multi-party computation, which is the ability for multiple nodes to collaboratively compute on kind of encrypted data or data that they don't have access to. But also you have fully homomorphic encryption, which functionally sounds a little bit the same, but it's kind of a different way of solving for that. You have zero knowledge proofs, which is a way for you to prove statements or things on your data or about your data without really disclosing it. And then you have a more hardware-like type of solutions like trusted execution environments or secure enclaves. So it is the combination of all these three, all these things, and the what we call the orchestration of actually all these things that make up, for the fabric on top of which Nillion is actually made.
Okay, fascinating. So we've really been baking this for the last 3, 4 decades. It's really come to fruition in the last 3, 4 years. There's different elements to cryptography. Talk to us about the opportunities that we have at hand now as users, consumers of this technology. What opportunities does this present for us?
Yeah. So maybe we can talk about it in terms of three different categories. One would be what it provides or brings to the existing Web3 environment or ecosystem. So Web3, as you know, is about decentralization. So it's about removing control from centralized authorities on the provisioning of services. For example, financial services. And currently, most Web3 technology is unable to handle private data. So everything remains public on the blockchain. And so that's why Web3 is quite limited and remains like a little bubble with less than 1% of the total number of users that you have on Web2. So what this brings to this particular space is the ability to unlock all those applications that will require actually private information. For example, you can now do custody, which is essentially storing your crypto coins or tokens. But now the private key doesn't have to be centralized. It can be stored in this decentralized network, so that no node has have access directly to your key, but together they can sign on your behalf when under your command when you instruct them to do so. Or for example, you can have crypto games where the state of the game remains private to guarantee that all that randomness that is used in the game is fairly produced and it's not tampered with, and it remains private as well. You can do voting for decentralized autonomous organizations, so essentially keeping the votes private, but you have a decentralized voting system so that no party can take advantage or control over the system and rig it. You have decentralized finance or DeFi kind of type of applications where you can have like this typical order book that is matching orders, bidders, and askers, and but it does so in a privacy preserving way, so that you don't know really what's being traded or on the amounts, but you can nevertheless do so. And you have things like secure messaging. So this would be like the Web3 category. Now, the second category could be like it's a new generation of applications that look and feel like Web2, but actually they run on decentralized rails. So they are decentralized in nature. And those are the things that you couldn't do until now without privacy. I'm thinking about connecting, all the information that exists in Web2, like wearables, music, emails, credit agencies, utilities, transport, social media, all the myriad of applications that there are there with a lot of data, and bringing that onto Web3. And we're seeing a category of people building on things that are kind of data to earn kind of products. So they are storing personal information from users in this system that is secure, and users have full control over that information. And then they can use that data either to earn money or maybe also to access services, to prove things about themselves when they need to. So this is like a whole new category that we're seeing emerge in the market. But also you can imagine health is really important. So there's a lot of applications about keeping your health data under your control so that you don't store it in a centralized server. And also there's this new thing that is possible, which is collaboration. So now companies can collaborate and compute things together. For example, imagine that you have a supply chain, and they're kind of collaborating but competing also. So they don't want to share all the information, but they do impact one another. So if one has a problem with the stock, it will affect the other one. But they don't want to share all the information. So this would be a nice way for them to actually synchronize and kind of gain insights and optimize the functioning of the supply chain without really sharing any information. And the same you can think for banking sector, telcos, airlines. All of them could gain the value from just gaining insights without actually sharing information. And the last one is very interesting. The last one is AI. I mean, we it's so important right now that I think it deserves its own category. And essentially, AI is taking privacy to the next level. It's what we call level 3 of information, because until now we were kind of okayish with Web2, getting our cookies and our browsing activity and so on. But AI is like a different beast. Where if you interact with an AI on a daily basis, it's going to learn a lot of things about you, or everything that makes you you. So it's going to really be very sensitive information that we're talking about here. And so the stakes are much higher, and you definitely don't want to store this information in a centralized server that belongs to some company. So this is a whole category on its own, and I think it's very well deserved to be so, because there's a lot of at stake here in this game.
It is. AI is its own category. Can decentralization, and considering the fabric of Web3 is really made up of security, privacy, be a bit part solution to the challenges that everyone is talking about in the AI space at the moment? Because I'm trying to put two and two together here, and we've spoken to other businesses in Web3 where the pillars of their business are built on top of privacy. Can some of what we're talking about with Nillion and other businesses maybe be a bit part solution to some of the challenges that I think everyone foresees in AI?
I think so, Elliot. I think it's a very good question. Um, yeah, what we're seeing now in AI is that there's this is like a monopoly of a few, so an oligopoly of a few companies that own the whole chain of value. So from collecting data to training models to running inference for end users. And that is a problem, because it means that you're restraining innovation, because it's just one company doing everything. You're not allowing new companies to come in because the barriers of entry are really high. And of course, these companies have all the information, very sensitive information, like not only your data, but also the training data. Now, these companies are seeing the problem of not being able to access private data in their training data sets. So they're also feeling the constraints of not being able to process private data in a privacy preserving way. But it's also about the users, right? It's about also like giving all our prompts to those companies. Now, where does decentralization and in particular privacy fit in? Well, decentralized AI, I think, with privacy could decouple the training data sets from the model weights, from the user inputs or prompts. And in doing so, it could allow for this new ecosystem to be created, where you have companies that specialize maybe on just the gathering of data in one domain, like agriculture, for example. You have other companies that specialize on training, and other ones that specialize on inference. And so now you have this open system where everyone can jump in and innovate and generate new ideas. And also you have the guarantees that Web3 provides in terms of fairness, and in terms of not putting all that sensitive information into one company's basket.
Yeah. Okay. There's some really interesting concepts. I'm personally looking forward to the evolution. I want to ask this next question, which is probably more directed at me and my usage or my interaction with blockchain. But how can we speed up adoption with accessibility? How can we make this more accessible for users like myself to be able to have access to decentralized apps or different services?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Usability is one of the Achilles heels from Web3, as you know. It's actually not user friendly at all. It's hard to interact with some of the decentralized applications. I think honestly that we need more Web2 people into Web3. So if you remember the second category that I spoke about, the one that was about bringing all the Web2 information into Web3, we are exploring that with hand in hand with a lot of Web2 entrepreneurs, and the apps that they're building, they're completely different from the existing ones that you see in the Web3 space, because those people are experts in AI, because sorry, in UX, because they come from Web2. And so they come with this new mentality of actually serving real users, understanding what a normal user is and knows. And all that knowledge, I think, is going to start pouring into Web3, because Web2 developers are going to start moving into Web3 because we have these privacy technologies that enables them to develop the same look and feel, the same type of applications that you would find in Web2.
Really interesting. We need to find that way to encourage more
Absolutely.
founders, more builders from Web 2 into Web 3, take
Yeah.
that knowledge with them. Yeah, for sure. Talk to us a little bit about PETs and why you feel they're going to be mainstream for devs.
Yeah. I really feel so. So we've had a first generation of cryptographic protocols. All of us developers are very familiar with TLS, SSL, JWT tokens, or the encrypted version JWE, or hashing. Sometimes we find that useful, or open auth, or OpenID, private API keys. All of that is part of our language, right? As Web2 developers. But as I was saying before, there's this generation of that. There's actually, I hesitate to call new, because it's been in the baking for like almost 4 decades. But it's a new generation of cryptographic protocols that enable you to do all sorts of computations on encrypted data, and those are going to become, I believe, part of our new language very soon. And I see in that respect Web3 being like the spear front, because in Web3, what you do have, you may not have UX experts, but what you do have is people very open-minded and very innovative, willing to try new technologies, and they're thriving. So these PETs, like zero knowledge proof, and MPC, and FHE, and TEs, they're all thriving in Web3. So I think in Web3, we're finding like an image of what the future will look like for normal Web2 developers. And very soon, I think Web2 developers are going to be manipulating and working with all those primitives, which is very exciting, I think.
Can you talk to us about how they actually make up blind computing or the blind computer?
Yes. So you have like core primitives that enable the basics, which is how can I share, like how can I give information to the network and then compute on it without actually allowing the nodes to see what I'm sharing with them. That is mainly MPC, multi-party computation. By definition, what it means is a series of methods or protocols that enable a collection of nodes to jointly compute a function or run a program without actually having access to their inputs, or the outputs or the intermediary computations. Then with MPC, you can build it with different building blocks. So the usual one is called linear secret sharing, like Shamir. Well, that's one. Another one may sound more familiar is FHE. So you can build MPC using fully homomorphic encryption. And another one is called garbled secrets. So your mental picture of what Nillion is becoming, the blind computer, is is essentially a menu, like a menu of primitives that you as a developer can choose depending on your needs and your use case. And for a given use case, it might be that what you need is linear secret sharing type of MPC. For another one, you might need garbled circuits and so on, because all of these different ways of building MPC, they find a different point in the performance trade-off space. So they will behave differently for different use cases. And the vision of Nillion is that you don't even have to think about that, because all the tooling will be able to make those decisions or recommendations on your behalf. That is kind of the end vision. For now, you will have to think about that. But in the future, that is kind of where we are aiming for.
Amazing. We were talking about accessibility, usability. It's really nice that it feels as if that you've got that at the forefront of your mind, building towards something with Nillion, because we're going to touch on dev's interaction with, the different primitives. And if you're building out the tooling to actually assist people in understanding some of the trade-offs with the different primitives, that will be quite key to its adoption. I've got another question on adoption after, but yeah, that's what I thought was really
I
interesting
have
about
a
the way
comment
in
on
which you're
that
moving
actually.
forward.
Yeah, as an example. So as I said before, we are betting really hard on AI. We think that is decentralized AI is really a must solve problem for society, and so we have created what we call the AI VM, or virtual machine. And just to show you how we do care about the usability and accessibility aspect, the front face or front language of that virtual machine is actually PyTorch, so that you work and with models and do everything that you do with AI just like you're used to as a developer. But under the hood, all that PyTorch version is actually running on top of PETs, but you don't see that. So that's the type of scenario that we really want to aim for, to make it really easy for normal developers that have no idea about cryptography to actually be using it without virtually knowing all the details.
Yeah. We've spoken about how decentralization can be powerful in helping us, not necessarily combat AI, but the security and privacy concerns around AI. What are the challenges that you feel are ahead of you in helping get to that place?
Yeah, for AI in particular, but also more in general for PETs, I think an important challenge is around performance. Um, there is there is a penalty that you have to pay when you, number one, decentralize things. So instead of having one node computing centrally on data, you have a network of nodes. So that obviously introduces some latency. And number two, when you enforce these computations under privacy, under this privacy preserving layer. So performance is definitely an important challenge. I think the way to tackle performance is to focus on different niches or applications, because it's possible, for example, with AI, if you focus on one domain, which is AI, it's possible to optimize the protocols a lot. And for example, we've done recent innovations, work that we've done with Meta and with other universities, that accelerates tenfold the inference and all the machinery that is involved in AI, training and inference and all that. That is one example of an innovation that is possible on performance because we are just settling for or focusing on one domain. Um, but also, I think that in time, as AI becomes more and more complex, our model of relating or interacting with AI will also change. I think that now we are like interacting like with a soldier. So you're giving a lot of low level orders and you expect immediate responses from the AI because they are not so intelligent. But as AI becomes more complex and intelligent, I think that that relationship will transition towards one with a general, where you just give high level instructions and you don't expect the general to come back like in a second with a solution of the whole strategy and all that. You give the general some time, and that is really good for privacy, right? Because on the one hand, the interactions with a general are much more sensitive than the ones you have with a soldier. The same will happen with AI as it gains more power and becomes more intelligent. You will give and delegate more to that AI, and it will have access to more personal information. But on the second on the other half, on the other half, what you have is that the requirements in terms of speed are more lax. They are less stringent. So it is a good scenario, I think, looking forward when you think in terms of decentralized AI with privacy.
Yeah, performance, especially in AI at the moment, is number one topic that people are trying to solve. Obviously, it's got its cost elements to it. Um, yeah, that's pretty public, but that is the really interesting problem to solve. And if you're trying to build something in that space, so fingers crossed. Um, Advice for people coming from Web 2 into Web 3. You've made that shift. Anyone that I speak to when they make that shift is so pleased they made that shift. Um, I'm not advocating everyone rush towards it, by the way, but what is one piece of advice that you would give someone if you've got multiple pieces? Perfect, but advice that you would give someone making that transition to make that knowledge gap a lot smaller in them coming up to speed?
Yeah. So one piece of advice would be to start interacting or just going to Twitter, to X. There's a lot of, I mean, crypto lives there. So there's a lot of valuable information that you have that you can find in there if you kind of start following the right people, which will lead you to other people and so on. There is a wealth of information there. The whole space lives there, which is good and bad. But the good thing is that it's very accessible to outsiders. So that's one. The other one, the other one is an observation which is that before it was much more difficult to switch from Web 2 to Web 3 because the technology was less mature. And so you really required a lot of knowledge, theoretical knowledge about cryptography, algorithms, and computer science. Now, most of the problems around decentralization, so getting a bunch of nodes interact with one another in an efficient way, or what we were talking about, the cryptographic side of things, they're becoming more like production ready kind of things. And so the profile or the type of person that is now able to switch from Web 2 to Web 3 is a much more standard type of developer with no special superpowers or skills. So I would encourage if you as a developer feel or kind of synchronize with the ideas behind decentralization, which is about giving power back to people and things like that, that you do think about making that switch because I'm sure that you will be able to. That being said, if you do have that knowledge, that theoretical or kind of more cryptographic knowledge, then you're a unicorn. You're like very lucky because there's a lot of good positions right now in different companies that are really well paid for that type of developer who is kind of the interface or the that is kind of bridging the gap between mathematics and engineering.
That's some really good insight. And I feel as if, from my limited understanding, I'm starting to see a lot more platforms being a lot more evolved. Tooling, we're talking about today, tooling is becoming a lot more evolved. So the foundational algorithmic, cryptographic challenges, not necessarily that they've been solved, but we now have layers on top of them to build from. um, that's what I feel I'm seeing a lot more in the ecosystem. So it's good to see the maturation process, and people don't look at. I know they've looked at Web3 as like the cool kids, um, but I feel it's becoming a lot more of the norm. A lot more buildings happening there.
Yeah. Yes. And I think now that privacy is part of Web3, we're gonna see more interaction between the two worlds, and they eventually will merge, I think, into one. And just developing Web3 won't be like a special thing. It will be just another feature in your application or requirement, because all those tools and yeah, all those layers of abstraction will be there for you to use.
Amazing. Talk to us about what you can, where even maybe some of the funding will go, but the vision of the next 12 months and where you really want to take Nillion with the folks around you.
So essentially, I think one of the characteristics of a Web3 project is that they're all about community. So they're technology, yes, but also community. So there's no doubt in my mind that in the next 12 months, one of the main things that we're going to be doing is growing with that community. Web3 is about giving away power, not only from companies, but also yourself as a company. So we are a decentralized company, which means we're going to transition into, we're going to be giving away a lot of decision making in our structure, so that we just kind of leave that as an entity that lives on itself, and we join the community on equal terms. The community can participate with us because they also have they can purchase tokens and so on. So it is this element, I think, the community, that we're going to be focusing on mostly next year on the social side or the business side. On the technological side, it's going to be about adding more different tools to the orchestration layer, to the blind computer, and also building bridges between them. So it's easier for developers to switch back and forth between them, either from a low-level programming language perspective, like maybe casting data types from one PET to another PET, from this kind of higher level tooling that we were talking about, which is essentially a smart compiler that is able to start making some of those decisions for you on your behalf. So I think it's really exciting times ahead of us, building this technology, but most importantly, building it with the community, and also helping all those different projects that are working on top of our technology as a platform to succeed. So that's one of the primary things that I do with my day. I meet with different FEs, founder entrepreneurs, and I help them build on top of Nillion. I kind of discover the wonderful products that they're building and try to help them map them into the infrastructure that we're building.
Love that. Well, I think it's fair to say you guys are solving some really, really interesting problems. I'm certainly looking ahead to the next 12 months. We'll be staying in touch, understanding more of what you're building, and we'll definitely be talking and seeing where you're up to in those 12 months. I want to say a massive thanks for coming to join us, finally getting the podcast done. And I think you've given us all a really nice background on Nillion, the blind computer, and some of the problems in the space, but also how you're tackling those problems and the solutions that you're providing with what you're building with Nillion, and us understanding the use cases, I think is only critical to the adoption of more blockchain technology like this. So a big, big thank you, Miguel.
Thank you, Elliot. It's been a pleasure.
And for everyone liking, sharing, subscribing, and of course, connecting with Miguel, all that information's below. There's also careers site, so you can check out a little bit more about where Nillion are hiring and what they're going to be doing over the coming months. And as always, it's bye for now from us. Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Engineers.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.